Hi everyone and welcome to Monday morning 8 a.m. from Firms Consulting. From today, you will see us releasing Monday morning 8 a.m. in a new format. What we will do differently is we will release each insight separately on a separate day throughout the week. So you'll get one insight on Monday, another on Tuesday, another on Wednesday, and so on. We are doing this for two important reasons. First, many of the insights are timeless. That means that the value of the insight lasts for a long time. That means someone reading it a week, 2 weeks, 3 months, 4 months, even a year after the insight was developed will still find the insight useful. And many members want to be able to find that specific insight, and it's difficult to do so when we have 4 or 5 insights packed into one podcast. So we've broken them up so you can simply look at the title of the podcast and know what it is about and be able to find it. This will make it easier for members to search, it will save you time, and you'll be able to pinpoint that particular insight to which you want to urgently re-listen. Now, if you can't wait to get access to all of the insights to the week and you want them all on a Monday morning, simply go to firmsconsulting.com/promo and opt into any of the email opt-ins we have. That'll put you into our email list on a Monday morning. We'll send you the newsletter version of all of the insights so you don't have to wait to get them all over the course of the week. And if you want access to past insights that are continuously being reused by members, simply go to amazon.com and search for Strategy Insights. They've all been published as a book. The link to the book you will find in this description. Now, if you love the book, and support it with reviews on Goodreads and Google Play. And of course, reviews on Amazon are most appreciated. Make sure you email support@firmsconsulting.com. That's support@firmsconsulting.com before the end of May, so we can include you and we send a thank you gift to our most loyal readers. And that thank you gift is a 1-month access to an accompanying course where we focus on how you can develop insights beyond the obvious. We'll help you think the way we think, so that you can understand how to analyze data and information to develop these counterintuitive and powerful insights that change the world. So here's today's strategy insight from this week's Monday morning 8 a.m. Today's 2 stories I'm going to focus on is the one called The Checkmate Asset the World Does Not Know China is Attracting. Now, as you know, China, the United States, Japan, they're in the news a lot because the world is now engaged in what is common competition. Countries compete, companies compete, individuals compete. And there's been a lot of talk about how do countries compete? Do we invest in semiconductors? Do we bring back chip manufacturing to the United States, to the European Union, for example? Do we invest in the precious metals driving the electric and renewables push? Japan and the United States recently signed a memorandum of understanding to co-invest in 6G research, not even 5G research. 5G is not even rolled out yet. The infrastructure is still being rolled out. The spectrum has just been purchased in the United States, for example, but they're already talking about 6G. Quantum computing, crypto computing. Where do you compete? And you notice that all of the moves are about securing assets, securing supply chains, and so on. And the underlying thinking here is that if you secure the asset, you secure the supply chain, and you build almost a coalition of aligned markets, you can win. Now, I'm not saying you will lose if you do that, but I want us to think a little bit more deeper about how the world actually works. I'm going to give you 3 stories here, and then I'm going to tie them together for you. If you've watched Narcos Mexico, which is that breakout hit on Netflix, a very good show, one of my favorite shows. In Narcos Mexico, in the first episode, a soon-to-be drug kingpin makes a very brilliant strategy observation. He says that the reason why every time we grow our weed in Sinaloa province in Mexico, the army comes in and they punish us with impunity. They shoot citizens, they shoot civilians, they do whatever they want, they burn everything. And I'm not saying that Mexican government does this in any way or form whatsoever. This is just a recount of the show. So he says the reason they do this is because none of the powerful people are in Sinaloa. The army would never do this if we were growing things and we had our operations based in Guadalajara state or somewhere like Mexico City, because they couldn't go in with impunity and punish people because they would never hurt the children or they'd never disrupt the lives of powerful people. Now, there's an insight here which I'll draw together in a second. Another example I want to give you is that if you look at any major publication today, the publication will never humanize a group of people that he thinks are the enemy. So let's assume there's a war being fought somewhere in the world. Think of any war you know of that's being fought today. And let's assume that you're an American and you're reading the newspaper. And the United States is on one side of the war and an enemy nation, a combatant nation, is on the other side of the war. What you would read in an American newspaper, and you can use the same example for the UK, for India, for Australia, and so on. What you would find is humanizing stories about our friends. We'd read stories about how these soldiers have to, leave their families, leave their daughters, kiss them goodbye and say, don't worry, Papa is coming back soon. We read these stories that humanize our soldiers, that make us care about them, that make us see them as humans and feel pain and emotion when they make these sacrifices for us. We would never see the same story about an enemy combatant. Why is that? The story is obviously interesting, but it's a technique we use. The technique we use is we dehumanize people we don't like. That's a common technique. Read any newspaper in the world and see if that newspaper humanizes what is considered to be the enemy combatant for the country where that newspaper is published. It would never happen. They would never try to humanize and make you feel a positive emotion towards the people you are trying to fight. The next thing I want to talk about, again, the third little vignette, is imagine you're doing an MBA, right? You're doing an MBA, imagine it's 10, 15 years from now. You're doing an MBA, and you can pick all the universities in the world. You can pick Tsinghua University in China. You can pick Oxford, a fabulous university in the United Kingdom. You can pick Harvard, Stanford. You can pick Ivy Business School, a very good school in Canada. I mean, there's many good schools. I'm not going to name them all, INSEAD and so on. Now, the point of business is to learn from the best business leaders, right? To learn from people making the most important decisions. So you go in there, imagine you're studying in, pick any school, right, that you want. You go there, and you know how the schools work. They bring in business leaders to talk to the class. So you go to your class and they say, we bring in one of the top insurance executives in the world. And you realize, you read down, you say, oh, this person runs the 6th largest insurance company in the world. Okay, not bad. 6th largest is good. The next day you bring in a pharmaceutical executive. You read down and you say, this executive is the CEO of the 3rd largest pharmaceutical company in the world. The next day, they bring in another executive, and they're the CEO of the 7th largest asset management in the world. Now, as a business person, do you want to learn from these executives who are running the 4th, 5th largest companies in the world, in the 3rd, 2nd largest markets in the world? Or do you want to learn from the executives running the largest companies in the world, in the largest markets in the world? I'm going to tie this together for you in a second. In fact, I'm going to do the tie-up now. Recently, HSBC announced, well, we actually made the case in an early edition of Strategy Insights. We said that at some point, HSBC has to make the decision. It needs a board that's representative of its primary market, which is Chinese. But actually, the first step is to have a board that's located in the primary market, which is China. And HSBC has recently announced that its senior executive officers are going to relocate to Hong Kong. Now, when you look at the rise of China and how China is being managed, there's one thing that's being missed here. That's what I call the humanization of the Chinese belief system. Let's think about this, right? You've got these HSBC executives moving to Hong Kong. And I'm sure they're going to be traveling to Shanghai and Beijing and so on. There's an important economy, Shenzhen. They'll be maybe based in Hong Kong, but they'll be operating across China, right? So they have their families in China. Their friends are in China. Their children are studying in China. Their children's children may end up staying in China. Their children's friends are in China. Their primary employees are in China. They interact with the Chinese on a daily basis. They're not relying on a newspaper, whichever newspaper it is, to tell the story to humanize why China is doing what it wants to do. They see it firsthand. Their economic well-being is tied to China. The economic well-being of their employees are tied to China. Every day they step out of their office, every day they interact with someone, they get like 1,000 newspapers humanizing the Chinese experience. Now imagine, we've just talked about 4 executives. I think it's 4 executives moving from HSBC. Now imagine extrapolate that in the future whereby certain Western companies are going to decide they may actually relocate the bulk of their operations to China and even move their CEO there. That's not unthinkable. Many companies have done that. But beyond that, you also have people who are executives from other parts of the world going to China and working in China. Now imagine this compounding effect where over time you've got 4, then 40, then 400, then 10,000, then 40,000, 50,000, maybe 1 million executives. These are powerful people who are now working in China, who have their interests attached to China, who have the interests of their children attached to China, whereby even their children may end up dating Chinese people. Now imagine how those executives think about how the world should react to China. Obviously, their lives are tied up in China. Do you think they want China to be isolated? Do you think they want China to be misunderstood? Do you think they want China to be successful? Do you think they are happy when negative things are said about China? No, they are not. When we look at how competition works, one of the things we often forget is that it's a technique that is used very often in media relations and public relations. It's the principle of dehumanizing and humanizing things. If you want to isolate something, you dehumanize it. Because then it's easy to punish it. It's easy to say, well, these people are different and we don't need to worry about them. But when you can humanize something, you force a bond to be developed. And it's just simple arithmetic here. If a few powerful people are based in Asia who are of Western origin with Western influence and Western connections, they're not as influential in deciding how the world should react to China. But as that number increases and they are influential in the West, they have strong connections, they can influence things in the West, clearly the amount of sway they have collectively starts changing, it starts having an impact. So as we think about how China is going to navigate the world and where it operates in the world, one thing we often forget is about how Western people who are based in China or aligned to China, what role they're going to play. You know, if you think of the former Soviet Union, nobody wanted to go to the former Soviet Union. You could cast the Soviet Union in a dehumanizing manner because there was literally very few people in the world allowed to go in and build a relationship with the local people or with the officials. So there's nobody in the West speaking for the Soviet Union. There was nobody in the West who was benefiting from the rise of the Soviet Union. But China is different. People are benefiting from the rise of China. Western executives are moving to China and they're tying their lives to this. And more of them will do that. So as we think about competition and how to align ourselves, one of the things I want to teach you here is that whenever you're having a problem engaging with someone, you must remember that you've got to ask yourself, to what level has my experience and needs been humanized with this person? So for example, if you're working in a company and maybe you're in R&D and the other department is engineering, and the engineers hate the R&D people because they think the R&D people have degrees in physics and talk down to everyone. In a sense, there's a principle of dehumanization taking place. So you need to then take time to go speak to the engineers, build a relationship with them so that they can see you're just a normal person. You make decisions just like them. You also have conflicts. You also have resource constraints. You may even bring some of the engineers to work in the R&D department. That's how you humanize things. But as we talk about great power competition, even competition between companies, the most important thing you have to think about is, why do you have this thought about someone or some country or some nation or some group of people? By and large, it's going to come down to the spectrum of humanization versus dehumanization. You need to know where on the spectrum you lie and why you lie on that spectrum. For example, if you have a negative view towards a country, towards a region, ask yourself, what am I reading about this region? And then, is it not obvious that I would have this view because of what I'm reading about this region? So what would happen if I engaged this region? What would happen if I spoke to people from this country? What would happen if I went on holiday in this country? What would happen if I relocated to this country? That would change. And that's at an individual perspective. From a macro perspective of how countries compete, it comes down to the most important tried and true principle of how do you build a great city, region, state, country. You have to be able to attract the brightest and most influential minds. That's where the battle is ultimately fought, not who has access to supply chains and so on. Those are important in the short term, but in the long term, if you attract smart people, influential people, people with power to move things, and you lock them into your ecosystem, not in a negative sense, but if you lock them in because they see value in being part of your ecosystem, in time, their influence will have a big impact in terms of how that part of the world is perceived. You need to think about that. And that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed doing the episode. Finally, I want you to remember that the only way to get access to our special offers, the only way to get our special pricing, and the only way to get samples of our content is to join the list on firmsconsulting.com. It's the only way also to get access to our unique advanced content that we make available to insiders. So if you want to get a sneak peek of things, test it out, see what's in there, this is the place to go. And finally, I want to thank you again for making us one of the largest podcast channels around the world for careers and for the 2 million downloads and counting.